Well, hello and welcome to episode 153 of the Childless Not by Choice podcast. My name is Civilla Morgan. My mission is to recognize and speak to the childless not by choice women and men around the world, reminding us that we can live joyful, relevant, fulfilled, childless not by choice lives. And whether you are childless or not, thank you for tuning in. Well, it is here, my 8-year podcastiversary. That's right. This is my 8-year podcastiversary. I am so excited. I can't believe I'm still here. And I know that I say this every single year, but I really can't believe I'm still podcasting. It just started out as something to get the word out. And I wanted to talk about it because I felt nobody else was talking about it. Childless not by choice. I just wanted to get the word out, and I started not knowing or even thinking about where this could possibly end up, and here I am 8 years later, my 8-year podcastiversary. It's unbelievable. Thank you for coming along with me for the journey. Before we continue, I would like to take a moment to say a special thank you to the people who make a financial contribution to the platform on a monthly basis, my Patreon contributors. Some of you have been donating, giving, contributing for years, and you are amazing. Your contributions are literally helping me. Every time I make those payments behind the scenes every single month, whatever you are giving is going towards making those payments. I'll be honest, I still have to come out of pocket, but it's okay. I've been coming out of pocket since day one, but those who are giving your contributions are making me have to come out of pocket less. And so thank you very much. Your contributions help me pay my podcast producer, my podcast host, Zoom, where I record a lot of my episodes where I interview people, aka guest episodes. So thank you so much. There is a lot always going on behind the scenes on any podcast, whether it's just an indie, like we call it, individual podcast, or independent. Well, independent is more what indie means in this case. Independent podcaster versus, those big shows where they have credits that run at the end of each episode. Yeah, that's not me. If I ran credits, they would say the people who give to the podcast and Civilla Morgan. Well, I should probably maybe add my podcast producer. So there may be a little bit of credit, but hey, I digress. I just want to say that I am an independent podcaster and I am proud. A proud, independent podcaster, and have been doing so for 8 years. If you are not yet a patron, please think about becoming one. Visit patreon.com/childless not by choice to set up your monthly contribution. This information is in the show notes, and no matter your giving level, I have a gift for you. Some people have said, oh, don't bother to send me anything, but I do have a gift. So please consider becoming a patron. Maybe one day I will not have to come out of pocket at all. That would be really cool. If you just want to give one time, PayPal me at booksbycivillamorgan@gmail.com. That's booksbycivillamorgan@gmail.com. And once again, that information is in the show notes. Well, as we continue on here, I want to give a heads up to those who listen to the podcast, the Childless Not by Choice podcast, on Stitcher, the Stitcher Podcatcher app, where honestly, that's where I listen to most of the podcasts that I listen to. Unfortunately, Stitcher is going away effective August 29th, 2023. They say that you may listen on their sister app, Pandora. I know many of you, especially here in the US, you know Pandora as a music app, much like Spotify. But Pandora, much like Spotify, started hosting podcasts a few years ago. So Stitcher is going away on August 29th. Be sure that any podcasts you listen to in there, you can export them out. And Stitcher gives you the instructions in the app on how to export your shows out so you don't go through one by one, which is what I had started doing. And just going over to Apple and just adding them, that you can actually export them out and follow the steps to do that. And, as I always say, the Childless Not by Choice podcast can be found in just about any podcatcher app anyway, including Apple Podcast, Spotify, Overcast, Himalaya, Bullhorn, Google Podcast, you name it, the podcast is there. And it feels so good to say it, but it's true. And I want to thank my podcasting host, Libsyn, Liberated Syndication. Libsyn is my podcast host, and they are the ones that show us, those of us who host on their platform, how to make sure we are everywhere. They find places for us to be, and I love them. They're awesome. They have a show. Their podcast airs, was it twice a month? I believe it's twice a month. And every once in a while, I'll put a 30 or 60-second spot on their podcast talking about this podcast, which they allow us to do. But for the month of July, I posted a podcastiversary spot, and they played it on one of their episodes in the month of July. So it was pretty cool to hear that. And I noticed I've been getting follows on my Instagram Joy and Relevance feed. So maybe that has something to do with it. But anyway, I just want to make sure that everybody understands that you can pretty much find the podcast anywhere. If you look somewhere and you're not seeing it, for instance, Ghana, it's on Ghana, which I understand is, if not one of the biggest music apps in India, the podcast is there. So a few things that I want to talk about. I want to talk to you about Milestones and Lemonade. Milestones and Lemonade. Milestone. I have been talking to you for 8 years, and I love it. A great big thank you to the longtime listeners, and a great big welcome to all of the new listeners. I am so happy you found us. If you have been listening since the beginning, you have been journeying with me through episodes where I had fabulous guests. All my guests have been fabulous. Times of me-only episodes, also known as monologues. And you stayed with me through the grief of losing my mom. And you have continued with me as I continue to care for my dad. You've journeyed with me by listening to the episodes that I created to help you on your journey. But you have given me grace for my journey, and I want to thank you. I still miss my mommy. It's been 4 years. Has it been 4 years? 2019 is when she passed away. And, I'm caring for my dad, and none of it is easy. None of this is easy. But, this very same dad used to say, dying is a part of life. And I always thought it sounded so weird and uncaring, but it's true. Doesn't make it any easier. But, I just want to encourage anyone out there who is grieving and suffering through the loss of a loved one that I totally get it. And I wish you a peace that passes all understanding. It's tough. It may be a part of life. It's something that's going to happen to all of us, but it doesn't make it easy. And I would be remiss if I did not say that if you need help in the grieving, feel free, do it. Go to Grief Share if you are a believer. Grief Share is held at churches all over, as far as I know, all over the U.S. I'm not sure if they're overseas, but whatever is available to you, wherever you are in this world, take it. Whether it's a group get-together for people who are grieving, maybe someone in leadership of your faith, speak to someone, speak to a third party. If you have a trusted family member that would understand. There are a lot of people in the world, and I don't understand this because we all are going to experience it. They just don't know how to deal with grief. And so you may run into people who don't know how to say, I'm sorry, my deepest condolences. I am so sorry for your loss. May his or her memory be a blessing. I first heard that on CNN. I love Wolf Blitzer, you guys. I love him. And he's one of the anchors on CNN. And during the pandemic, he used to mention the names of people who passed during his show, and he always would say at the end, "May their memory be a blessing." And I just absolutely love that. I had never heard it before. I love it. And I use it now. I took it. I stole it from him because I love that so much. May his memory be a blessing. May her memory be a blessing. I just absolutely love that. So just know that if you are grieving, it's normal. There's nothing wrong with it. Even if people don't acknowledge your grief or acknowledge you in the grieving, whether it's grieving the loss of a family member or grieving the loss of the opportunity to have a child, I see you, I hear you, I recognize you, and may the memory be a blessing. So, lemonade. I love lemons. And the nice, fresh, ripe lemons that you roll on the kitchen counter a few times before you cut them in half and squeeze them to make lemonade, or squeeze them on seafood to create a whole nother level of flavor. Yeah, those lemons. I love lemons. But life's lemons, they are a whole nother story. And I'm sure we can all agree on that. I mean, what lemon or lemons are you dealing with right now? We all get the lemons. I just finished talking about grief. We all get the lemons in this life. We're not going to get out of this without getting at least one lemon. And I believe although the lemon, the fruit, adds another level of taste to many dishes, including the drink, lemonade, life's lemons can feel harsh. They can be breathtakingly harsh sometimes until you turn them into lemonade. Remember, life it's filled with choices, and unless you decide, you choose to make the best of the life you've been given, the childless not by choice life, things can become and stay overwhelming for a very long time, if not your entire life. And oh my gosh, who wants that? Life is too short. I mean, we just talked about grief and losing loved ones, and life is short. Do the best you can with where you are, how you are, and when you are. Most of us don't have full control over our jobs, our family members, where we live. We may not like our living situations, all of those things. But whatever you can control or manage or do, I don't mean control in a negative sense. I mean manage or control, then do it. It will be good for your mental health too. I mean, what is also good for your mental health is to know the difference between what you can control and what you cannot. That's something we all have to work on and manage, but the fact is, there is no perfect life, even for people with children. There is no perfect life. There's no perfection. A lot of people like to put on fronts. We call it a front here in the U.S. when they put on a pretense, a face for the world. But behind the scenes, mayhem. And that can go for people with children as well as people without children. Most people hide their mayhem. I mean, nobody wants to go out into some people don't mind, but most of us don't want to go out into the world and show the mayhem that we may be dealing with. And we don't have to. We need to realize and recognize that mayhem is not normal. Drama is not normal. There's nothing normal about a lack of peace and always at 100 and always something yelling and screaming and carrying out. No. No, I live for peace. I will do just about anything for peace because I just don't like drama and mayhem. And I will do anything for peace, but there are some things I have no control over right now. And so you may understand what I'm talking about, but know that whatever you can control or manage, try to do so. And even if you just need to get away every once in a while, my favorite place, go to the beach. Or go to the library, go to a play, go to the museum, just to step out of whatever mayhem you may have to deal with. Go for a walk, whatever you need to do, just even for 5 minutes to maintain your mental health, do it, because mayhem is not normal. So let's pivot. Let's pivot back to Milestone. The first time I interviewed a man on the podcast was, from what I can gather, because I've gone back through my podcast library. I've gone back to the beginning. And from what I can gather, the first time I interviewed a man on the podcast was in 2015. Mind you, I just had not thought about men being childless not by choice, but even then, if I remember correctly, and the link is in the show notes, it was not even an interview on the podcast. It was on a platform called Blab. I miss Blab so much. Blab, it's unfortunate that they had such a good thing going, but the founders just wanted more too fast, too soon, and it just crashed and burned, unfortunately. But it was such a lovely platform because that's where I met the two gentlemen who helped me create this platform. When you look at my website, childlessnotbychoice.net, and you look at the colors, the variations, the themes, these two Scottish from Scotland gentlemen helped me, you guys. They are like 6 hours ahead, and we would stay up till all hours of the night working on this platform. It was absolutely fabulous. And so I just want to say that these two gentlemen are the ones that helped me create this platform, which I find ironic. They both have children, but I never thought about men and childlessness, I guess is what I'm saying. So do listen to that Blab interview. It was a chat, basically. Blab had rooms within the platform, and you would just join different rooms. They would show what the topic was for each room, and if you found interest in the topic, then you would join that room. And there were rooms of people. People had created rooms from all over the world, and it was 24/7. It was such a fabulous platform. So when you listen to this, you'll find it may sound different. The quality is good, the sound quality, but the whole setup is a little different, and that's because it was done on Blab and it wasn't an interview on my platform per se. But please listen to that podcast. It's pretty cool. And then I also went back into the podcast library to look for episodes with authors, authors I interviewed who wanted to come on or I invited on to talk about their book onto the podcast. And from what I can gather here, I found, I don't know, I feel like it's more than what I found, but I feel like I found 7 episodes of people that I interviewed, authors that I interviewed. I feel like it's more than that. 153 episodes and only 7 of authors? Probably more, but I don't know. Just letting you know, there are multiple episodes with authors. Check them out, especially if you want books on childlessness. These are all authors who wrote, their topic was childlessness, on being childless. And so if you are looking for books on childlessness, be sure to check out the podcast and go back into the back catalog. I've also posted in the Childless Not by Choice Facebook group a list by episodes, the different topics, and there's a topic in there on authors. So be sure to check that out if you are a part of the group. And if you're not a part of the group, why not? Come join us. Sometimes it's a little quiet in there, as I always say, but other times it's great conversation, and I'm here for all of it. A lot of times I stay out of it. I just want to watch and hear and listen to what you all are saying in there without joining in all the time. But I am there, and there are fabulous women that moderate. So if you have not joined yet, please do. Please come join us. We would love to have you. So, speaking of going back into the back catalog, do you re-listen to episodes or re-watch certain movies or shows? There is a movie, my favorite movie. I don't know why I guess maybe it may be a little bit shallow for some people, but my favorite movie, I hope it's okay for me to mention, I'm not trying to plug anything or anything like that, but my favorite movie, the one I have watched multiple times. Well, maybe I won't mention it. If you reach out to me, I'll tell you. But I just love this movie, and I've watched it so many times, and I never get tired of watching it. And it's not as deep as you think. You may think of me and think it's a deep movie or it's a religious movie. It's none of those things, but I just love the movie. And the main character is one of my favorite actresses ever. She is so good at what she does. But anyway, I am bringing all of that to say, just like you can rewatch movies and shows It's okay to re-listen to episodes. Maybe when they first came out, they didn't or would not have affected you like they may affect you now. So feel free to re-listen. And I will tell you, just to be, honest with you, that every download, every time you listen, it's a download. And a lot of podcasters rely on downloads for getting ads on their podcasts, because a lot of companies will not place ads on podcasts that have below a certain number of monthly downloads. So I'll be honest with you and tell you that every time you listen, it is a download. But I still, after 8 years, I'm nowhere near the number these advertisers need. And so I'm fine with that. There are like 100,000 podcasts out there. We can't all get sponsors. I would love a sponsor, because that again would help me with the cost of the show. So I'm not saying I wouldn't love a sponsor, but just to be realistic, that's not where my numbers are right now. That's just how it is. This podcast is a labor of love. It has reached out to many people. There are people who have reached out to me over the years, some of them at great risk. Some of them are living in parts of the world where being a childless woman is not a good thing. And so I know that I'm reaching hearts and minds. I'm also reaching people who have children, trying to make them understand and see that not everybody's living the type of life they're living. So I will continue to do this until I get to the point where maybe I just can't do it anymore for whatever reason. But it's definitely not for the downloads, and it's definitely not for the money. So I just want you to know that I'm just being transparent, that every time you listen to an episode, it is a download for my podcast, and thank you. So moving on here, just talking about rewatching, trying to catch back up to where I am in my place here. But yeah, just, I honestly, I am always shocked at what I missed the first time or even the second time I rewatch or re-listen to something. There's a show on Stars. It's in its seventh season. I'll say that 10 times fast. It's in its 7th season. Some of you may know what it is just by me saying that. I love that show. I have rewatched most of the episodes so many times, and every time I go back and watch an episode, I see something new. And it could be that maybe I was multitasking the first time I watched. We do that, right? And so I may have missed something, a cue that was visual, not audio, and I may have missed it. So again, don't be afraid to go back and re-listen. It's not going to break the podcast. And remember, an episode can affect you in a different way when you watch it later in the queue. So, Lemonade, kind of where I just left off. I want to revisit patronage and giving again. If you find value in the content, if the podcast has helped you in any way, consider giving, contributing. I would like to continue creating this podcast, and I believe that regardless of the contributions, I will continue. As I said, this is a labor of love, and if I ever stopped this podcast, it would not be because of the finances on the platform. It would be because I felt it was time. I don't feel it's time now, so don't worry. But being able to use your contributions to pay for things on the platform would be really cool. So once again, to those of you who give regularly, thank you. If you've been just thinking about it, not doing it, because I do the same thing. I listen to many podcasts, and there are some that I keep saying, I need to make a contribution, even if it's a one time, and I just, a lot of times just don't get to it. So I'm guilty of it. So I get it. But if it's something that you've been thinking about, please consider it now, especially during my 8-year podcastiversary. It would be really appreciated. And while I'm asking, I would also like to ask you to consider leaving a review at Apple Podcast to help bring recognition to the podcast. It would be greatly appreciated. Anything you can do, tell people about it, even people with children about it. If there's a certain episode that just kind of hit you a certain way, share the episode on your platform, in your life. Reshare, no problem resharing at all. And once again, I want to just thank you for being here. I want you to know that I see you, I think of you, you are worthy, you are here for a reason, you are fabulous. Don't forget that. And here's to another 8 years. Cheers!